I went to university at Stanford. I studied industrial engineering. I came to Ghana. What? Why aren't these places planned? My second year at grad school, I started to get more of an idea. The urban planning came into place.
Boom! What's up, guys? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Joannis or Joe Hatagwa. I'm a Sierra Leonean-American in Accra, Ghana. And if you want to know why somebody would move from New York City to Accra, Ghana, then this is the video for you. Alright, so today we're meeting with Florence Adu. She is a social entrepreneur and project management consultant. We're gonna hear her story, why she decided to move to Ghana, and what she does here for a living. So, without further ado, let's do it. Alright guys, I am back in Ghana and I'm here with the one and only Florence Adu. First of all, Florence, thank you for doing this.
Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. So Florence is a Ghanaian-American social entrepreneur, project management consultant. She is the founder of Transmedia and the co-founder of Flirt with the World, and she is also the host of Glocal Citizens podcast. So Florence and I met at Ivy Prosper's birthday party, and we started talking, and I realized that Florence has an accent that sounds similar to mine. She obviously lived in the States for a while. So, of course, I love to tell the story of people who've moved here from the diaspora and hear their story so that you guys can learn about what people are doing here and why someone would leave the States and move here. So, with that, I'd love to start with your background. Where were you born and where did you grow up?
So I was born in Denver, Colorado.
Okay.
And I grew up in Denver, Colorado.
Okay.
And I guess if I want to get into the weeds, because this is something I do on my own.
Sure. Yeah.
I grew up in an area called Park Hill.
Okay.
So people think Colorado, they think Denver, like, oh, were there black people there?
Right.
Increasingly there are, and there actually are quite a few Africans now.
Okay.
There were not growing up necessarily. So I feel like my family was part of like the pioneering group of Africans or Ghanaians that were there. So they were the bandwagon that welcomed people. So we did have not only a Ghanaian community, an African community growing up in Denver. Now, outside of Denver, until more recently, that's a totally different story. But yes, there are black people in Park Hill, Capitol Hill. Those are generally the areas where you definitely find black people.
Okay, cool. And your parents are both Ghanaian?
Both of my parents are Ghanaian.
Okay.
I'm Ga and Fanti.
Okay.
And I just recently found out I'm Ga, Fanti, and Akan. So I'm very toasted. I'm like a sandwich.
Yes.
So my mother is half Ga, half Fanti, or half-ish Ga and Fanti. And my father is Akan and Ga.
Okay. And so you grew up in the States. Were you coming back and forth between Ghana and the States? Had you come to visit as a kid?
As an infant.
Okay.
So the first time, my father, how we ended up in the States is that my father got a scholarship to the University of Denver, and that's why Denver. He had a friend that got a scholarship. They was like, oh, come. So he worked it out. They worked it out. My dad got a scholarship. So went to University of Denver, and then he's on a student visa, trying to make sure they stay.
Sure.
So when I was 1, I had my first birthday here in Ghana.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, so right around then we were back because, getting to see family, of course, introduce them to their kids because I have an elder sister.
Okay.
Actually, I have more than just that one, but between my mom and my dad.
Sure.
And so we were here for some time until the visa thing got sorted out. So that was my first trip, and then I didn't return until I was in graduate school.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
So let's get to that. So where did you go to school? I know you have an undergrad and a graduate degree. Mm-hmm. Pretty prestigious institution, so if you want to say where you went to school.
So I went to university at Stanford.
Yep.
And I studied industrial engineering.
Okay.
Now management engineering. Management science and engineering. That's what the degree is now. And then I did Teach for America.
Okay.
In Washington, D.C.
Nice.
So I'm from Colorado to California to Washington, D.C. I lived in Silver Spring, Maryland, and I taught in Upper Northwest.
Okay.
And because I had a science degree, I taught science, or science, science, which was great.
Right.
And I ended up going to graduate school in New York because as a teacher, so just kind of a little bit of background, my degree, that industrial engineering, was one of the closest things to a business degree.
Right.
So that's what's called Math and Sciences and Engineering, because it fits what people do generally. So that was the closest thing to a business degree that Stanford had, aside from economics, and economics was not my thing then. So when I was deciding, I did an internship in New York called SEO, Sponsors for Educational Opportunities. So look that up. That's a great opportunity for young people to have a Wall Street experience. They have law now. They have it in Africa. So I'm a mentor for SEO here in Ghana.
Nice.
I think they have Kenya, they might have Nigeria, but SEO, Sponsors for Educational Opportunities, SEO, look it up. So I did that, and that wasn't for me.
Okay.
Yeah, I did an internship at JP Morgan. I was on the structured assets desk. That was when derivatives were like becoming the thing. So I got the knowledge, but it was just, money was not what I wanted to work in.
Sure.
And so I had an RA that at University she applied. She was doing teach. She was going to be doing. She had left and not done Teach for America. I was like, oh, if I really think about what I want to do with my life, I really want to impact children. Like a teacher, my first Black teacher was like life-changing for me because she helped give me the confidence and I was always smart, but my white teachers never, there was a couple that were like, oh yeah, you're part of the smart people, but she truly put me in where I was, just side story. So I don't know if I guess it still exists because even as a teacher, I saw the tracking.
Okay.
So, there were the people that were tracked that were ahead, those that were on level, those were below level, or what have you. So she was the first person that put me not squarely actually, there was one that. So I was not only in the math and science, because I was always really there, but in the reading and English.
Got it.
So, because I was like the spelling champion. Like she would take us that I literally every time I would she gave these awards. Maybe Miss Glenn. Shout out Miss Glenn. So she had these incentives. So the people who scored the highest on the spelling test got to go to McDonald's, Burger King, wherever we chose as a treat for lunch. Yeah. Every quarter or whatever. So I was always there. Yeah. So that just gave me the confidence in my reading skills, because part of that challenge I think was coming from a home that was bilingual and not necessarily being bilingual. So, I'm not sure, and I'm just thinking about it now, the fact that my parents were speaking a different language, how that really impacted, I was always a reader, but how that impacted my own, communication, written communication, storytelling. So maybe that's why I'm storytelling, I don't know. But in any case, Black teacher helped me out tremendously. I did Teach for America. And I applied from that, and I really thought it was great. So, but I got in my classroom, and I was like, I really am doing a good job with these kids, but what's impacting them is not this classroom. Yeah. It's that mom doesn't have a job. It's that grandma doesn't have support. Right. It's that uncle is maybe in jail, or father's not around. So I really realized that it was about economic policy more so than just the education policy. And so that's why, I studied, so I went to NYU, urban policy and economics is what I ended up studying in graduate school. And so that's how I ended up in New York.
Got it. Okay, now you did mention that you came back to Ghana while you were in graduate school. Yes. So how did the urban policy and economic planning? Urban planning and economic policy.
Urban policy and economics.
Okay, urban policy and economics. How did that translate to you coming to Ghana during that?
Yes.
During your stint in grad school. Yeah.
So really interesting. So we traveled as children, the U.S. for the most part.
Sure.
But that started going into that program started my international travel self. Okay. So I think we'd gone to London as a family when I was teaching. Okay. So that was the first time I was open, I'm going. So I was okay, I'm gonna go to Ghana, and then I'm gonna go to, because and then I'll go to London and then go to Ghana because it passes through.
Sure.
So I went there, I came to Ghana and I was struck by, that was just international world expanding. I was struck by the fact that we didn't have roads. Internet, that was a big thing then, so really, but what really struck me as an economic, a policy professional was that why aren't these places planned? Why don't we have public transportation? Why am I in a JoJo? Why is it so crowded? Why don't I know a schedule? Like all these things around transportation that were really like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
You know, I got it, but then no lie, when my cousin picked me up from the airport, we're getting home to our house and she's buying everything that we need.
On the
roadside, so the hawkers. And I was like, what? Why don't we go to a store? But we were in traffic for so long.
Right.
I was like, oh, I get it. But it was such a wow, this is crazy.
Yeah.
And it was really because the roads were terrible.
Right.
Or there weren't enough of them. So I left that experience, my first trip, awesome time, but I left that first trip with the idea that when I come back here, I'm building roads.
Got it.
So that was the first piece. And then that was, I think, my first year in grad school. So then my second year in grad school, I started to get more of an idea because the urban planning came into place. And so it was about the roads, but it was also about the professionals that were not doing their jobs.
I see.
And so I had this whole idea of policy professionals. Like, I'm going to do policy professionals thing. I'm going to get people from students or graduate students to go and be advisors to the civil service so that they understand how to advance the policy infrastructure, right? That was just a big dream in any case. I had a lot of big dreams that eventually came or now placed me here. So that was another concept that I think is probably a down the line thing. So the next summer before I went into the professional world, I spent a summer in France and Belgium studying European policy.
Okay.
Really looking at the European Union and how they came to be in the European Union and how policy is implemented there. And then, so I saw this other dynamic of African immigrants in France. Which was a whole different kind of identity. Because that was, I want to say, going to London and being around Ghanaians mostly, I felt much like I felt in the US, but these immigrants didn't feel the same.
Okay.
And I mean, I was in Lyon, and so it was, I don't know, they were mostly lower income, they were very much struggling, and the French looked down on them in a totally different way, and me as a Black African, were looking at me side eyes. So that was oh wow, there's some stuff that's going on here.
Sure.
And so I came out of that with the idea where's the unity in Africa? How does our diaspora really come together and be together? So these are the kind of ideas that were milling, and then I left that experience and went into economic development for the city of New York.
Okay.
And so that was an awesome experience. And so just to kind of close on that question that you asked about when it came from my first experience as an adult seeing was to come and do something.
Got it.
And so if you look at my the about of my podcast, that's a big part. And also I have a children's clothing line that it's about doing something.
Right.
Coming and doing something.
Understood. Well, that's awesome. So we kind of got to what you did as your career right after grad school. How did you make the transition to decide to move to Ghana, and then when did you move to Ghana?
So that's another seed that I didn't really expand on. So the other piece was that it really became stark to me, my lack of language.
Okay.
My parents didn't speak local language with us in the house.
Sure.
So my sister understands fluently, fairly fluently, because she's an elder.
Sure.
By the time I came, she's speaking English, they're speaking English, so I'm snippets. And so even to this day, I'm still snippets.
Sure.
And I've been here 10 years, which is really bad, and it's the reason why I came. And so don't fault me, folks. Don't fault me. But that's what. So I left here saying to myself, I wanted to make sure that my children would have the language. Like me not having it, they would have the language. Because when you come and you don't speak, your cousins look at you like, oh, but you're deaf. you don't hear. And it's true. You actually are. Unless you're very tuned or whatever, you could be in a whole different world, and a whole other world is happening.
Yeah, absolutely.
Aside next to you.
Yeah.
So I thought to my head, I was like, I'm gonna do something. I'm gonna bring Sesame Street to Ghana.
Okay.
That was the in-grad school idea. Like, we should do that. Like, that's how, because people learn how to speak English.
Right. Watching
Sesame Street. Adults, no lie. Like, in any country, like, people can watch Sesame Street in English and or wherever they are. But that was a key thing that I understood, that people watch Sesame Street to learn English and basically children's television to learn a language. And so that was an inspiration to me. And then being an educator and then being in the policy space, I had these relationships that allowed me to reach out to my network and say, hey, who knows someone at Sesame? Or actually, one of my former colleagues was working at Sesame, and I said, look, I have this idea, can you introduce me? She introduced me, I met with them. They said, we're actually doing a project in Nigeria.
Okay.
So we've done it, and we created a Sesame program that's in English. But we're contemplating translating it to Hausa.
Okay.
And so we're like, oh, well, that's great. But they're like, the idea of doing a local in Ghana, it seems like a great idea. Fast forward, I had at the time a business partner who was here, who was also passionate about the same concept, and had been working with the Ministry of Education.
Okay.
So based on those meetings, I said, look, I'm going to start a company, and I'm going to bring Sesame to Ghana. And I'll say that I've been marginally successful with that.
Okay.
And that's just because, like any not-for-profit, and I think the biggest clue that I think others can observe about the business model for Sesame is that Sesame is on HBO. Sesame started as a public good. It was funded by public television, and so the way that, unfortunately, those types of programs, for the most part, are funded is because there's a public entity that has decided that this is a public good.
Right.
And so that's how. Unfortunately, that also becomes what gets cut, right? So and it also needing to grow and needing to programs. So Sesame doesn't come to the table with funds.
Right.
So basically, for all of these projects, and the projects around the world, there's a public entity typically that says, look, we want to do this for our people, we want to support it. So that's how the collaboration happens. They're typically public-private partnerships or foundations that have a goal to do something. So they have Ford Foundation, they have Gates Foundation, a number of foundations pretty much support their operations, and that's how the projects are formed. So we had this organic concept that wasn't necessarily funded.
Okay.
We had the idea, well, USAID is doing stuff in Ghana, how about that?
Right.
A long story, that wasn't necessarily part of their agenda. But where we are is that we do have an MOU with them to use their content. Now, should we be able to find funding? And so that's a whole, when we talk about doing business in Africa or in Ghana, we can get into. But should the funding be there, we have full access to content to work with. And to collaborate, create co-production.
Nice. So that project was really what spearheaded your move, right?
Yes, I came here to start this company to do this work. Yes.
Okay,
that's LEAP Transmedia, and LEAP stands for Learning, Education, Arts, and People.
Nice.
And it's Transmedia because, I think it's a word that at the time resonated very much with myself, and now everything is transmedia, but really looking at the ideas, the core of the idea is that we're telling stories on all platforms, but that story has common themes, but it's a different iteration on every platform. Right?
Yeah.
So our TikTok story, for example, would be something that might be fairly different, like take a different character line or a different character understanding than what might be on YouTube or what might be on broadcast television. So that's the flexibility of what transmedia storytelling offers.
Got it. And can you talk a little bit more about LEAP Transmedia? So, you went through the acronym and you talked a little bit about how that kind of tied into the idea of bringing Sesame Street here. What all are you focused on with LEAP Transmedia outside of the Sesame Street project?
Right. So the company is really focused on informational and educational content for children and families.
Okay.
And so children is the core because let's face it, we are not paying attention to our kids.
So true.
Particularly here in Africa.
Right.
And when we say, some people say, oh, education's so important, like, I want to pay my school fees, but who are you paying to teach?
Right.
Are they trained? Do they really know what's going on? So part of the work that we have been able to do is creating training materials for teachers.
Okay.
So that was a project that was actually USAID funded. It was truncated based on, challenges with the ways that I want to say the development community works, right? So in any case, that was called the Z-Leap program. So it was the Zongo Empowerment Leap program.
Okay.
It wasn't an acronym for Leap, but it was Zongo Empowerment, Learning, Education, and Opportunity or something of that nature. And so we partnered with a local Islamic organization to focus on creating upward-entry content for math and science, for early learners. So we were looking at pre-K and KG1 and KG2.
Okay.
So we were creating, and so why Ghana was an interesting, or is an interesting laboratory for this kind of work is that there is policy that is really asking for the education system to teach a mother tongue first. What there is there's resistance from families to a large degree because they feel like English is what they need to know to get ahead.
Mm-hmm.
With that, and that's just kind of a social cultural ignorance because as we see a lot of times there's all these social media clips and things where they're showing people who are speaking English how. They're choosing words that are like, that's not English.
Right.
So they're not really learning English very well, and they don't know how to read and write necessarily in their own language because they came to just learn English. Right. So the key thing for me is that children need to come to education not as a foreign language.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're coming to school and the first language that you're hearing or being taught in is a new language, something that you haven't been speaking for the last 2-3 years, then you are at a disadvantage than someone who has been speaking the same thing and now can relate one with one, as opposed to Ekome with, one and then the number one. So you're already like translating something differently. Right. So we created games, reading tools, learning tools, and a teacher's training manual to go along with it, to train the teachers how to teach in the local language. I see. And so that's a big part of a lot of our mission has been to think about how do we make sure that the educators are able to do the job that we're asking them to do to bring that language, that mother tongue as the first language. Right. So so children are 100% learning in their mother tongue, they're that much more successful, and statistics show that. Right. And so then the transition to English starts to come at class 2. Okay. So second grade for those in the West, and then that would be how education would proceed in the most logical way. Right. But that doesn't necessarily happen. Yeah. That's a challenge. It's really about who you're teaching. So that is on the children's side. That's interesting. So we have the language, the learning, early learners content, that's a focus. Sure. But then also there's the adolescence and character building, right? So character is really important. So I worked on a co-production with an animation company, Animax FYB Studios here in Ghana. Been working with them for years. And so we have a collaboration, which is a Mofra channel. So Mofra, you can find it on Amazon Prime, Mofra channel. So we have a pilot on it that we've been shopping. So if you see it and you like it, tell someone so we can get some money to make that stuff. So this is our version. So and being here, I realized Sesame is great, but I can do what I can do with what I have, right? Right. So we created an early learn, let's say 8 different shorts. Okay. So it's our children's variety program addressing children from 3 to 13 adolescents.
Okay, nice.
And so we have early learning, we have character development, we have, and it's animation and live action.
Right.
One of the ones, we have traffic, so one is Xena the zebra. And so Xena's a zebra who is the traffic teacher.
Okay.
Right? She interacts with humans and the environment of the roads about road safety. We have one on water and sanitation, a wash program. That's like a newscast. That's like the man on the street newscast.
Okay.
We have what I'm the host for now, you know, but it's called Green Encyclopedia.
Okay.
So that is a garden lab. So garden club meets and we talk about plants and the science of the plant, the history of the plant. We interact with the plant and then we go into the kitchen lab and create.
Yeah.
So different professionals come and help the kids create something from the plant.
Nice.
And then we have a sci-fi, our Afrofuturistic, and still imagining, but this is kind of an Afrofuturistic environmental program called Captaincy. Okay. So she is a young girl who is really troubled by what's going on environmentally, and so she time travels and changes the past to make a better future.
Got it.
So yeah.
Nice.
So those are just a few of them. But Over Channel, it's on Amazon Prime. Check it out.
Nice, love it. Okay, so I also saw that you are a project management consultant.
Yes.
I have looked at the, what is this thing called? There's like there's like the different levels. What's the project management certificates? PMP and all those things. And I'm just not a great test taker, so I haven't done any of that. So I always applaud people who've gone through the process or who focus on project management. But what does that actually mean for those who are out there who want to understand what does a project management consultant do, or at least from your perspective?
Yeah. So I will say that this is where the engineering me is, and I actually say people are like, oh, you're an engineer. Yeah, I think I'm an engineer every day.
Sure.
Right. That is just how I approach life. I'm a problem solver.
Right.
And so that is the approach that I take to project management is like, how do we solve the problem most efficiently, most effectively? And so how do I come to project management? I think it is the way that I think. So that is one.
Sure.
But my first job as an undergrad school was project manager.
Sure.
And so that's how I started to understand what that meant. So I was given a project that was called Digital NYC.
Okay.
And so that was a public-private partnership where we partnered with property developers to develop their real estate.
Okay.
And the target was tech companies. So this was the tech.com boom. So we were like, how do we make sure that we capture that talent and keep it here and create spaces that help to that industry to flourish? So I can say that the project was actually very successful. So we opened tech districts in each of the 5 boroughs.
Sure. In New York, by the way, 5 boroughs in New York.
The 5 boroughs in New York.
Yeah.
And the most successful of the districts was Dumbo. So down on the Manhattan Bridge overpass, that was downtown Brooklyn Digital or downtown Brooklyn Connected. Like they came up with these names that were just marketing. So a lot of it was the marketing. But the idea was the success in that was that we had a very strong property developer who was about it. He made sure that to do the work, we did the marketing, we brought the people, they had it. It was so successful that they have now reimagined the space. So I want to say most of the buildings that we initially, they moved them, like they redesigned the community they wanted to attract live work, and now it's very live. It's one of the hottest ticket neighborhoods. But the spaces that that the companies we attracted are now residential. So they converted them. So they were these industrial warehouses that then were converted to commercial lots, and then now they're back to residential. Highest and best use kinds of things.
Sure.
So that's where I really started to get into the real estate side of project management. So working and understanding, the financial structures, working with contractors, all of those things to just make sure the project was successful. My family also has always been in property, so rental properties. My mother is like a property hoarder here in Ghana. So,
Okay.
so that came kind of after, but where I really started was with that kind of work.
Sure.
And so I've gone on to just kind of understand industrial properties, residential properties, commercial properties. So I focus on real estate and construction project management.
Okay.
But in the process of doing that program, like managing that project, I also understand, and also with my degree, I have a keen understanding of not-for-profit operations and just business operations. So
Sure.
I actually can, help a business strategize with business planning and,
Sure.
and marketing and what have you. I'm not a marketing expert by any means, but I definitely can, I'm creative. So that's where that comes in. But I want to say the tools of a project manager are organization and time management.
Okay.
And managing expectations. And you really have to communicate, this is what the goals are, and this is what I need you to do, because you have to hold everyone accountable for what it is that needs to happen as a project manager.
Yeah. Okay. And so, and I read that it covers, what was it? Construction and renovation projects, lease, and even purchase negotiations. So you also help people with, and negotiating is a big thing here in Ghana. With an American accent, you get hit with the really high number, right?
Yes.
So I think that's obviously really, really important to have someone who understands the local context and also knows how to negotiate on your behalf, because that is something that I've learned the hard way, for sure. All the knickknacks that I have in things around my house, and I had to negotiate hardcore, but I paid full price at first, and then after a while I was like, wait a second, that person just wants something very similar for like a quarter of the price. I was like, I had to learn. Okay, cool. So you also do, business operations analysis and process design, program development, strategy implementation. You did mention marketing, grant writing, policy analysis, and fundraising. So all of those, do they fall under the project management umbrella? Do they fall under one specific business? Like all of those things that you do.
Yeah.
Where does that apply?
Right. I would say as an entrepreneur, that's where a lot of it coalesces.
Okay.
Right. So, aside from being like working with my clients on whatever it is that they're needing, like some might need just the process engineer, some might need just the grants or the, support with the grant writing.
Sure.
But I say it all coalesces like that. All of those things have been what I've had to do to build a business.
Okay, got it.
As a social entrepreneur.
Cool. And then I wanted to ask you about Flirt with the World. We talked about this briefly a little earlier, not obviously in the interview, but can you talk to us about this project and then what came out of it? Because I think it's also a really interesting project.
Yeah. So Flirt with the World was is a partnership between myself and two of my friends. One is a marketing communications executive. Like she travels the world, so she had this international perspective on, I want to say development and also just implementation,
sure.
and from a communications perspective. Then another good friend of mine, she has been in reproductive health for most of her career.
Okay.
So education around STDs, HIV, AIDS, and just everything that has to do with sexual and reproductive health.
Sure.
So we were like, I had this idea of like, I would love to do something that empowers the community, but then also attracts, like it straddles that bridge. So it's bridging the social with the people,
sure.
and the culture and what have you. So I came up with this idea. We were just hanging out. It's like, such reproduction, like flirt. People flirt. So let's flirt with the world. Let's use that as the name of an initiative that really looks at how people become responsible flirters, and then also empowers them to take control of their reproductive health, because that was a huge challenge. So we launched here in Ghana with a million condom giveaway.
Wow.
That was the idea. That was the idea. So we started with that, small steps.
Sure.
This is where the grant writing and fundraising, how do you make that happen?
Right.
And part of that was kicked off because we did a short film.
Okay.
There's this organization called PATH, and they had a call for films on female condoms.
Got it.
So we did a short film on female condoms, and we were finalists. So we were finalists, and the finals were Malaysia. We obviously weren't going to go because we were just finalists, but we didn't win. But it was really great to be one of 12 out of hundreds of submissions that was recognized as, oh, that's an interesting story. So we took that as wanting to introduce female condoms to this market because it was really about empowering women in particular and young people to take control of their reproductive health. So we launched with the Million Condom Giveaway in partnership with another not-for-profit, African Health Now.
Okay.
That's also Ghana-based not-for-profit and focused on health and wellness and on non-communicative diseases, so like diabetes, heart disease, like those kinds of things. And since then, they've kind of started to focus very much on maternal health. So this was in 2012, 10 years ago. We launched with the Million Condom Giveaway, and we did activations in 4 parts of the city, so malls, Tiptoe Lane. So if anyone knows, well, just to give you an idea, Tiptoe Lane is like the red light district in Accra. So it's around the Kwame Nkrumah Circle. So Tiptoe Lane, we did a beach giveaway. And engage university volunteers. We engaged volunteers and also social organizations. Planned Parenthood was involved.
Oh wow.
And then the local AIDS initiative. So it was really great. We did, and then out of the Bush Market.
Okay.
So it was a great start to kick off this concept. We did media, and it was great. And so that then got us another grant to just kind of do more and create content. So we created a book. And it's called Love Safely. So we self-published the book. It's on Amazon, and it's a guide to loving safely. So there's flirtation. It's really fun. There's some nice graphics, but it's just really helping people because people don't even know their bodies. So really knowing your bodies, and then kind of tips on how to communicate with a partner, and just the different tools and techniques that are out there for birth control and just all that. So
nice. I love it. I have friends who work in reproductive health, and it's so important here on the continent. Well, anywhere really, but I think here there's a little bit less of women feel like they have a voice or having a voice, right, in any of these things, right, whether it's their reproductive health or sexually, right? And so I think it's important to have that kind of education. That's awesome. So the Glocal Citizens podcast, which I'm going to be on, which I'm excited to be on. I would love to know, first of all, how did you come up with the name, and what made you decide to do the podcast?
Yeah, this is a great story. So being in media, I primarily been behind the camera, or behind, aside from being Encyclopedia, but just kind of being a producer and being in that role. But I've always had, and even we created, one of the first things that we created was a radio program. But obviously, and this was before podcasts were really like a strong. So it was a radio program that was a travel show kind of for kids. Didn't have a lot of uptake because people were like, oh, but how do kids schedule radio time? So, but I'm a radio head. I love radio. I've always loved radio. Like that's been in public. Everything public to me is like, there's not so good, but there's really great. So then how it progressed is that a friend of mine was starting a podcast network. And was like, hey, are you interested? And I said, yeah, I've always wanted to be like in my mind, in my visions, I was like, I'm going to be a presenter. I want to hear it now. I was like, I'm going to be radio. I'm going to present the news. I'd love to read the news. So he said, are you interested in a podcast? I was like, yeah. He's like, yeah, come up with a concept and, we'll produce it for you. Like, all you have to do is do the interviews. And I was like, oh, okay. I feel like a superstar.
Of course.
So I did. I thought about it, and I thought, what do I want to talk about? Who do I want to talk? And mind you, their network was about business, so it needs to be a business related concept. So I came up with Global Citizens, global and local citizens, and the citizens is because where I feel like a lot of us, are faltering is that we don't feel like citizens. Like the word is, thrown around. Like, what does citizenship mean? And so like when I say global, like it really takes into account you are global and you are local and you are a citizen. So what are you doing to impact your people, your environment, wherever it is that you are local and in the global context.
Sure.
And so that's how it came about.
Nice.
And so fast forward, they didn't raise money. They didn't raise enough money. So they were like, oh, we're not doing it anymore, but I don't know if we've done it. Obviously, I'm a producer.
Sure.
And obviously I loved it. So then I just brought it into the Leap umbrella. And so that's our first podcast.
Nice. Okay. And so who are you featuring on the podcast?
Yes. So my focus is dynamic diasporans living in and around the world, making impact. So I particularly am focused on Africa and the Caribbean, mostly the global South, right? So people who are doing things for the uplift of peoples who have been traditionally, contemporarily disempowered.
Okay.
So that's the idea. And just making impact in arts and education and business. I mean, there's business to every endeavor.
Sure.
So our conversations will always touch on like what the mechanics are of the generation of wealth or money, you want to call it that.
Sure.
But it's also about how you get situated in the space and how you understand a little bit of kind of like what we're talking about. But
sure. Yeah. Okay. Cool. I mean, so we talk a lot about all the different things that you do. There are always questions about starting a business here. What's it like to have a business here? So I'd love to get from you, what are some of the challenges starting your businesses here in Ghana in particular?
So I would say the biggest challenge is, or biggest opportunity,
sure,
is the opportunity to grow in patience.
Yes.
So, and I say that to the extent that everyone understands time is money.
Sure.
But the valuation of that time is a very different currency in the West versus here, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So I think that's the biggest piece. So really understanding and also recognizing the opportunity to build capacity in the system.
Yeah.
Because what I think that we haven't, particularly the African, the Black American diaspora versus we haven't really recognized what it is to have someone occupy where you live. And so that's a different mentality than, our Black people in America understand that they're different, disenfranchised coming to someone else's land.
Sure.
But imagine that same disenfranchised, we'll just call it colonizer. But imagine those colonizers came and actually colonized you. They came to your land and decided that you were something else. So the ways that you understand yourself and the environment around you become a whole different thing.
So true.
And so that's kind of something that you have to roll back and then recognize as part of the disconnect, and then figure out how that bridge happened, right?
Okay.
So us having parents who are from this side, I think have a leg up just because we have family that gives us kind of that intelligence, or our minds are just open to it. But I think that understanding that, because you think, well, why would they, and even for Africans, like recognize that the way that you think is because someone came to occupy your place.
Right.
And so you have this envy and desire for that other when you have everything that you ever need here.
Right.
And that's why they came. So recognize that value.
Yes.
And so I'd say that, and that's the foundation, because it takes time. Like I'm 10 years in, I've been here 10 years working on this. And sidebar, I run other businesses, and necessarily so, because I think it's difficult to, being not in the system, generate wealth in the system.
I got you.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it takes time.
Yeah. Okay. And on that, on the flip side of that, right? What have been some of the best moments or the best parts about having a business here in Ghana?
Just when I see the mission.
Yeah.
In reality.
Nice.
Like on set with the kids, doing activations. We had we did a World Malaria day activation.
Yeah.
So one of the first projects we did was to distribute content because we didn't have content. So Ubongo Media, which is based in Tanzania,
Yep.
gave us opportunity to distribute their Ubongo Kids.
Okay.
And so they have a wealth of content. They're doing gangbusters, and Ubongo, cheer.
Yeah.
But so what we did is we took their malaria episode and went to a local school that was focused on out-of-school children.
Okay.
So street children.
Okay.
And we did, they have a program where they work with street children's empowerment program.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it is.
Okay.
It's based in Jamestown, which is literally the school is up the street from my family house.
Oh, wow.
So that was and so I was able to give people in the neighborhood jobs, it's volunteering. And so we partnered with Kini Skincare.
Okay.
They gave us mosquito repellents, so we gave those away to the kids, and then just screened the show. And then we worked with Environment 360 because obviously it's about the environment and educating. And so they're also a social enterprise here that's focused on the environment. We did coloring exercise.
Okay.
So yeah, it was great. Anything that I'm really in it with the kids and seeing that they're there because we're just not a lot.
Right.
So that's been the most empowering about being in business.
Seeing the impact, I love it. Okay, and then last question on that topic is, what advice would you give to anyone looking to move to Ghana and wants to start a business here?
Take your time.
Mm-hmm.
I think my advice to most people across the world, anywhere, is figure out your passive income game, or figure out your mobile income game.
Sure.
Because I have the opportunity because my parents are Ghanaian, I'm a dual citizen.
Sure.
So I can work here and be here without having to go through documents, right? I don't have to get a visa, I don't have to do any of those things. So do your homework, number one, and figure out where you can feel the most at ease with that process. Because it really is stressful to have to leave and word that out. So that's me.
Yes.
But I would say the thing that people run away from is because they thought they had enough money and then they run out.
Yeah.
So I think until you become a part of the system, and that takes time. It's not going to happen in 1 year. It may not happen in 3 years. But until you can become a part of the system, and I am a part of the system, and I still make my money outside. So just really figure out what your passive income or your mobile income game is. That would be first for me.
I like that. Passive income and mobile income. And then understanding being inside the system, that's super important. I don't think anybody's ever said that before, so that's it. Okay, so first of all, this has been great, very informative. I learned a lot, actually. So the last question I have is, where can everybody find you online? Okay,
so you can find me online. GlocalCitizensPod.com is where you can find the podcast. And new episodes Tuesdays. So check that out. We just finished our March Her Story series, so we have some great women that we profiled. And I'm Flirty Flo on Instagram. I'm Florence Adu, that's my God name, Adu on Facebook. LinkedIn, same full name, Florence Adu. YouTube, I'm not on TikTok, and I'm not really on Twitter, so.
Okay, nice. And of course, all of that will be in the description below, but I just wanted to make sure she got a chance to get it out there and plug all of those things. Okay, cool. So that was Florence's story. What did you guys think? Did you guys have any questions that I missed? If you did, let us know in the comments below. Of course, if you like this video, hit that thumbs up and make sure you share this with anybody who's planning to move to Ghana. And with that, guys, thanks for watching. See you on the next video. Alright guys, if you like this video, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, like, comment, and share it with your friends. Alright, see you on the next video.